Imposters are not unheard of in Yharnam. While most citizens don't trust outsiders at all, during the hunt they don't have a choice and they must cooperate with us, making them easier to lure into our trap. Our goal is to impersonate each NPC we kill and copy their appearance to the best of our ability. We'll use the same armor, weapons, and consumables as our victim, and, if applicable, we'll equip whichever rune they drop. The consumables part only applies to offensive items, such as throwables or attack buffs. Defensive consumables may be used regardless of if the original NPC had them or not. For example, we may use Adela's blood to heal ourselves, even if no NPC has access to this item, but we may not use a beast blood pellet to boost our damage output if the NPC we're imitating does not use them. We must kill each NPC in order to take their body. If an NPC is still alive, we won't be able to fully harness their power and won't be ready to fight any bosses. Once an NPC is dead, we can only use them to fight 2 bosses. Usually, I only allow 1 use of an NPC, for instance, in the Dark Souls version of this run. I had to adjust this number to 2 for Bloodborne because this game has more bosses than it has NPCs with obtainable gear. Several of the NPCs in this game don't even use the player model, nor do they use weapons. If an NPC has mostly obtainable gear, let's say everything but their weapon, I am allowed to improvise the unobtainable parts just like I would do in the enemy imitating challenge. Normally, I ban any NPCs with unattainable gear, but our options are way more limited than before, so we'll have to get creative. Lastly, I can only impersonate killable NPCs, as in, they must have a permanent body in the world that I can interact with and attack. Any NPC that is exclusively found as a cooperator doesn't count in this challenge. Now that the rules have been explained, let's get started with the challenge. We'll pick the military veteran so we have a good balance of strength and skill to start out with. For our weapon, I'm going with a threaded cane since it's the only starter weapon to be used by an NPC, so we'll need it sooner or later. As for our gun, we need the hunter pistol right away for our first identity. So let's grab it and see what else we'll need as we prepare for the first murder of the run. Unless we use the wolf in the clinic to glitch into the Forbidden Woods early, Eileen is the only NPC with obtainable gear until we get past Father Gascoigne. Luckily for us, she's standing awfully close to these rafters, which sets her up for an easy kill if we can just trick her into falling off. Unlike me, she actually has good movement and knows how to effectively navigate around the rafters. So what we need to do is trick her into attacking, so she'll overextend herself and fall off that way. The one time I'm not thankful for Bloodborne's low fall damage is when I'm trying to use it to my advantage against a tanky NPC. Even if she falls all the way to the lowest level of the sewer, it won't be enough to kill her, but it'll still get her very close to death, and if we're careful, we can probably finish her off with bullets and other projectiles from the safety of the upper level. If we aggro a rat in the process, it can also hit her, but the reverse also applies. And she's much stronger than the rat, so this isn't a reliable way to damage her. The plunging attack, however, is the most reliable move in the game, so we should use that instead. Moving on to the last thing in our arsenal, we have a stack of Molotov cocktails we can throw before we are forced to go down there and fight her head-on. After I managed to land a super successful and worthwhile plunging attack, I backed myself into a corner and went for a panic parry that I can't believe actually worked. The rest of the fight really puts into perspective how weak I am compared to her. She looked like she would be 1 hit away from death, but the damage from my cane was so low that it would be more like 4 or 5 hits. Of course, I started panicking even more upon seeing this and swung like crazy, hoping she would just die, but I managed to regain some clarity for just a moment as I backed away and used my gun instead. After all, it was much safer and was practically doing the same amount of damage. Alright, well, killing her is just the first step. We've still got a lot of work to do before we can assume her identity. In Bloodborne, NPCs don't usually drop any of their gear, but rather a badge which will unlock their equipment in the Bath Messenger shop for a fee. Her weapon alone is 40,000 blood echoes. Combined with all 4 pieces of the Crow Feather set, this will cost us 84,000 blood echoes in total. While I admit that is a lot to ask this early in the game, I've farmed worse, so I don't mind doing this legitimately, no matter how sweetly the Infinite Blood Echoes button beckons me. As a hunter of hunters, Eileen's got a good setup for Father Gascoigne. The hunter pistol is optimal for parrying, and the Blade of Mercy is meant to counter quick-moving humanoid enemies. Of course, he doesn't have a ton of health, so this fight will just be a parry fest in the first phase, but in the second phase our weapon's unique properties will be able to shine more, assuming I can make it that far. Coming back to Bloodborne after playing so much Dark Souls is always an adjustment, especially on boss fights. I used to prefer playing this game without locking on because I wanted to roll, but nowadays I realize how much I was missing out on by neglecting the dash. The Blade of Mercy in particular relies on dash attacks, but you don't really see me showcasing it here since I was too busy fishing for backstabs. Now that we've given him a fair fight, I think we've earned the right to start leveling up, increasing vitality first, as per usual. Our NPC targets are limited right now, and though we could use Eileen back-to-back if we wanted to, I'd rather save her second use for later and switch to something different. Besides, we never know when we'll run out of NPCs in the future, so it might be wise to save some of our uses just in case. Looking at our short list of NPCs, only one of them has equipment we can obtain right away, the retired hunter Dura, who shoots at us in Old Yharnam. Technically, he doesn't break the rules, because he can be encountered as a friendly NPC, provided certain conditions are met. And even when he's hostile, he still talks to you, and obviously he has a physical body, though that part applies to every other hostile NPC, since there aren't any true invasions in the base game. He's pretty tough, so just like with Eileen, I'm going to be relying on environmental hazards and get him to fall off the tower. He's an aggressive one though, so it'll be difficult to lure him off the edge since he's going to start chasing us the moment we step off the ladder, and of course, he conveniently becomes passive when we step back on the ladder, so we can't take advantage of his aggression so easily. Instead, we'll have to try to knock him off the ledge in a proper battle before he has time to retaliate. If we go down with him, so be it. I instinctively tried to quit out, but then I realized I would have to reload the game anyway, so I won't miss out on his drop if I have to come back. With the Powder Keg badge, we can now buy the Ashen Hunter set from the Insight shop. From here, we'll need to use the rest of our Blood Echoes to increase our strength to 18 so we can wield his weapon. The good thing about doing all that farming is we have as many Bloodstone shards as we need to upgrade multiple weapons to +3. Against his wishes, we'll be using Dura's body to slay a beast, specifically the blood-starved beast at the end of Old Yharnam. But I imagine that 15 minutes of fighting this would change his mind pretty fast. It doesn't look like this fight will take that long this time around. The State Driver puts out decent damage in normal mode, and has an especially powerful heavy attack when transformed. However, its startup time makes it difficult to use in normal combat, and as the description says, it should only be used after staggering your enemy. My muscle memory forbade me from doing anything but a regular old visceral attack, but we don't need to worry too much about optimizing our damage for an early boss like this one. With our damage, we don't really need to rely on crits anyway. As long as we stay close and have antidotes at the ready, this fight won't be too bad. When it's done, the workshop will be open and we can obtain the doll clothes from within, and of course, the first of 3 umbilical cords that I will be absolutely sure to consume this time. Why do we care about the doll clothes? Well, because she's an easy NPC for us to imitate. She can't be killed forever, but the fact that she can be killed at all is good enough for me. A doll's body is quite fragile. Going through Hemwick Charnel Lane made me feel defenseless, and that's because I pretty much am defenseless aside from my fists. Those barely do any damage outside of visceral attacks, so I'm not even gonna bother with anything out this way and just get to the shortcut. We can always come back later. And after encountering the witch once, we will be doing exactly that, so we can make her minions go away. I don't care what, we gotta spend our insight on something so they don't materialize. Also, I forgot I still need to kill the doll as a formality, but since I don't have any insight, she's already inanimate. I guess that'll have to do for now. The Witch of Hemwick is hardly ever a threat, even when fighting with fists only since she's susceptible to backstabs. Regardless, it's never a good idea to run directly in front of her while she's casting a spell. It happens. While I could use the excuse that I only died to her AoE because I was still mashing to break out of the grab, excuses only work so many times. Let's just let that one slide. It was actually a perfect fight, I just didn't have any insight, so you couldn't see it. I've had enough of being a doll for now. For the next fight, we need to switch back to one of our human identities. Since the next fight is Vicar Amelia, Dura returns. His equipment worked really well on the last beast hunt, so he's gonna kill another one whether he likes it or not. Before that, I'd like to explore the remainder of the cathedral ward so we can pick up some equipment and, of course, recruit a few victims we can deal with later. Adela is definitely the most important one, since she gives us no choice but to choose her blood, at least until we meet Adeline. As we all know, Dura is also equipped with an endless supply of Molotov cocktails, so we might as well try those out on Amelia too. The only thing holding them back from being viable is the inventory limit. The damage is decent even without oil. It's not like I really needed the help though. The stake driver is breaking her limbs in rapid succession with little time for her to do anything in between. It goes without saying that she didn't even get a chance to heal by the time the fight was over. That was a refreshing change of pace from the last time we fought her on the channel. Let's get some levels and head out to collect more equipment before Dura retires as a hunter for good. Most of the equipment we're looking for is in the DLC. A surprising amount of it can be found before you even get to Ludwig. As I was collecting Walter's equipment in anticipation for a potential early Ludwig battle, I realized that I'm not prepared for the DLC at all, but I think the Whirligig Saw will be able to carry us through the Ludwig fight, regardless of how weak our character is. We just have to upgrade it until it's strong enough to do so. Let's slow down for the time being and take it one step at a time. We haven't even gotten through the Forbidden Woods, let alone made it to Walter. Most of what we need is concentrated in the early part of the level. We'll come back to this section later. First, we need to open our shortcut, which also happens to be the place where we'll get the final piece of our outfit. And don't forget about his friend. I don't need him for anything, he's just in the way. Since we'll be heading down there shortly, we'll go ahead and send this guy to the clinic so we can meet him there. Unfortunately, it is often the case that we imposters don't always agree on our modus operandi. As such, it's not uncommon for our infighting to turn deadly. It's a shame it has to come to this, but I can't have her interfering in my work. After collecting our invitation, we can proceed to Canehurst, where we'll find the bloodstone chunks we need to upgrade our weapon to a decent level. As we explore the castle, we'll find several unique sets worn by NPCs. For instance, we find most of Alfred's clothes here. I might as well upgrade my strength while I'm at it, because the higher our strength, the more the Whirligig Saw will benefit from it. At +8, it'll scale nicely with strength, and in the transformed mode, it does serrated damage, meaning we'll get yet another damage boost against Ludwig. It's definitely easy to get carried away with all that damage, especially since Adela's blood tends to make me overconfident. That's part of what makes Bloodborne so fun though, since this game encourages aggression a lot more than Dark Souls does. Spamming in this game feels much more rewarding when the game has a mechanic that lets you get more damage if you hit something enough. Sometimes it feels like this game was made for a greedy player like me. By no means did I deserve to win with how terribly I was playing in the second phase, but Whirligig Saw don't care, give me stagger. With how easy it made the Ludwig fight, I figured I would keep leveling strength until we reach the soft cap. We might even see some immediate benefit since we still haven't fought the Cleric Beast yet. I'm sure it's a lot better than if we had come here before getting all those levels, but as you can tell from my blood-soaked clothes, I've been at this for like 10 minutes already. This fight went a lot better for the doll. All she needed was a little factory reset. Once we've defeated the Cleric Beast, we can buy the Kirk Hammer from the messenger shop. Alongside this, we'll be needing Ludwig's rifle because now that we have the executioner's set, there is no reason to keep Alfred alive any longer. In fact, his own weapon is great for killing human-type enemies with its pancaking ability. No surprise that he would choose such a weapon. If you've seen the other versions of this challenge, you know I don't like randomly assigning an NPC their targets. I like to tailor it to the individual and make it as personal and painful as possible. As I'm sure you've already predicted, we're gonna take Alfred to Cainhurst and make him fight Logarius. The Kirk hammer should be decent here since, as we mentioned, it works well for interrupting and staggering humanoids, but in this case, the blunt damage will also be helpful since Logarius is weaker to physical damage in general. In Phase 2, he's not going to be as easy to stagger. I wasn't even able to stagger him with a fully charged heavy attack. Clearly, treating him like a regular NPC schmuck is not gonna work out for us. We need to come up with an actual strategy. Ludwig's rifle isn't ideal for parrying since it has such heavy recoil, but as long as you have your spacing right, you'll still have enough time to do a visceral attack. Another easy way to get crits in Phase 2 is to bait out his jumping attack. Walk under him a bit, and prepare your backstab the moment he lands. I can faintly hear Alfred's soul screaming from the bottom of the fiery pits of hell. He'll have to put up with the betrayal of his corporeal form, because I want the Chikage, and I think that's a little more important than respecting his wishes. I'm probably ready to head back into the DLC and even face a couple more bosses there, but before I do that, I'd like to get some Chalice stuff done since there are a couple of exclusive items we need to get from there. Don't worry, I'm doing like 99% of this off-screen, so if you ever see me carrying a ton of blood echoes all of a sudden, just assume this is where they came from. We'll go down the line of tombs until we get to the Forgotten Madman fight. If we beat him, we'll unlock a unique set in the Insight Shop. He does way more damage than I remembered. I guess I must have always fought him super late. The only thing we actually need is the leggings. There's one NPC that wears those and nothing else from the set. Of course, we can also buy the Chikage now that we have enough echoes. We'll need that in the future, but what we'll also need is some arcane, so I might as well start leveling it now. Right now, I'm actually trying to finish collecting gear for a future Yamamura cosplay. Even if it isn't urgent, it's good to have options. First, we'll kill the Beast Hunter and the Nightmare so we can unlock the piercing rifle in the shop. After we've bought everything, we can explore the research hall as we make our way to the underground cell key. There's a mini skip we can do to get it slightly earlier. All we have to do is jump from this ladder and plunge towards the platform. Then we can get the key without having to rotate the stairs. From here, we'll go back to his cell, unlock it, and there we have it. The man himself, in the flesh. I guess we can't interact with him to talk, but he talks to himself. That's practically the same thing, right? For once, we don't have to pay for an armor set. Now then, we'll finish up with the research hall and also collect some brain fluid from the patient on the rafters. Before the fight with the living failures, I upgraded the Blade of Mercy to +7 and put whatever I could into skill to boost our damage. There's no reason for us to progress Adeline's quest any further in this run. As long as we've given her brain fluid once, we can collect her blood as many times as we need. While I'm still taking advantage of how easily they can be parried, I'm hoping that since they absorb some of our arcane damage, we'll get a chance to show off the unique properties of the Blade of Mercy. At the same time, this may not be the best fight to do that since it's repetitive and doesn't require as much movement as the other bosses, especially with how prone I am to losing my patience and choking at the very end. I learned my lesson and resisted the urge to get a backstab during the meteor shower. Instead, I will patiently wait my turn to attack. I decided that I wouldn't replenish any of my bullets, nor bring a rune that can do so, because I wanted to force myself to rely on the dash attack. You can chain a few of these together and still do decent damage to them, and of course there's nothing wrong with going for a cheeky backstab to end the fight. Okay, never mind, it's not worth the risk, just wait those extra 5 seconds. After this, we're upgrading our blunderbuss. Then it's straight to Lady Maria so we can unlock the fishing hamlet. For this one, we'll use Walter a second time. Only this time, since she's not a beast, we'll mostly be using the untransformed version of the saw, if it can even be called a saw in this case. Similarly to Ludwig's rifle, the blunderbuss has some heavy recoil, but the same thing applies to her that applied to Logarius. As long as we aren't too far away, we shouldn't have a problem performing a visceral attack, even on a fast enemy like her. Even then, it's still important to at least try to dodge her attacks instead of spamming L2, especially since a missed shot from the blunderbuss leaves us wide open. This is especially important in the second and third phase of the fight, where her attacks cover more distance and can easily punish you if you try something funny. There's always the option of stun-locking her with the transformed attacks, but be careful because certain attacks do have hyper armor and they will kill you. In the end, I switched back to the untransformed mode and stayed close the whole time. After punishing her attack, you can set her up for a parry, since she typically will try to stop your pressure with one of her heavier and thus slower attacks. Eventually, she figured out what was up and started lag switching on me, but I already had her back against a wall, so there was nothing she could do to stop my momentum. There's an abundance of NPC equipment in the fishing hamlet, so now that the way there is open, I don't have to be as picky with boss fights. We can pretty much fight whatever we want. That being said, it would probably be wisest to progress to the Blood Moon phase of the game. I mean, we're almost done with the DLC, and we haven't even fought the Shadows of Yharnam yet. I'm probably a bit over-leveled for this one, so I limited the upgrades on my weapon. Mind you, I don't care about giving them a fair fight. I just wanted a real chance to test out Logarius' wheel. The untransformed moveset is pretty linear, so it's easy for them to dodge out of the way. Because of this, I focused on parrying in the first phase, as usual. Once I had whittled them down, I switched to the transformed version of the weapon, which I was honestly missing out on by not using from the beginning. Now then, before we move on, we first need to collect the NPC gear from the fishing hamlet that I've been talking about for a while. We can find the Harrowed Hunter set in a home close to where the ladder shortcut is, and Simon himself at the end of the village. All we have to do is talk to him here and he'll pass away painlessly on his own. We've got a bit of farming to do at the usual spot in the Chalice dungeons. I like to kill this snatcher in front of the treasure room to get twin shards. Occasionally we may get some other things too, like ritual blood, and that could also be useful for some of the other dungeons I'll have to go through later, off camera of course. After spending any excess blood echoes, it's time to go back to the fishing hamlet and defeat Broader at all of his invasion locations. Each phantom will drop one piece of his set. All of them spawn in the most inconvenient locations possible, and the lead elixirs are very annoying to deal with. As compensation, his real body is incredibly weak and will disintegrate at the slightest disturbance, granting us our final reward, the Blood Letter. Apparently, Simon uses the Fist of Brasha, so I'll pick that up from one of the cells before I depart for another area. Like I said, we're going to need to go through other Chalice dungeons eventually, so I'll go ahead and get Amygdala out of the way. In fact, I think this fight is perfect for Simon. A bow is a perfect weapon for this boss in particular, since hitting her head with projectiles is the easiest way to defeat her by far. Once again, I'll cap the bow blade at +3 so we aren't too overpowered. Here we can get our first Hunter's Tool, at least the first one to have a use in this playthrough. While Simon might be good for the boss fight, going through this area with 0 frenzy resistance and over 80 insight may have been a mistake. Thankfully, I made it out unscathed, at least until I tried to use the lift and got sent to the void. This is the price we pay for those 60 frames a second, baby. Initially, I planned to use the bow the whole time and keep my distance from her. After all, if we hardly get hit, we'll have plenty of vials to spend on replenishing our bullets. When she gets this low, we might as well stop being a coward and get in there. If you face your fears head on, the Great Ones will reward you in kind. Despite what just happened, I still think a hybrid approach is better in the long run. If we can wear her down with melee attacks, we won't have to spend as much time healing bullets. And we'll have more bullets left over to deal with her in the second phase and make it easier. After exhausting my bullets, I switch to melee once again, making sure to focus on my positioning so I don't repeat my previous mistake. That's one more area of the Chalice dungeons unlocked. This time, we'll go through ailing Laurence until we make it to the Beast Claw in the treasure room. Of course, you know me. I love Chalice dungeons, so I went through the whole thing and came back with a ton of blood echoes. First, we need at least 16 blood tins to use the bloodletter. From here, we can start upgrading it before Broader goes out to fight Rom, and also level up some other stats while we're at it. I don't think +3 will cut it, but I'm all out of upgrade materials. I didn't farm this time because I just remembered that I haven't gone and looted everything in pre-Blood Moon Yahar'gul, so we'd better get 'em while the getting's good. Rom's blood defense is the same as her physical defenses, so we'll test both modes of the weapon and see what works better. In cases like these, it's probably better to use the untransformed version since it's faster and uses less stamina per swing. Also, it one-shots the spiders, which is refreshing to see. I know some people just go straight for Rom and don't waste their time on the spiders, but I'm not cracked like that, so I always kill them unless I have some kind of crazy setup. After the Blood Moon, Adela has finally lost it, but more importantly, she's no longer useful to us, so we can kill her now and prepare a suitable build. We can also buy twin shards from the Insight shop now. It would definitely be a good idea to spend some of this Insight since Frenzy is an issue in late game areas. While I finish up with the Adela cosplay, I'll use Yamamura to go through the remainder of the fishing hamlet. Unfortunately, we are going to have to kill the sharks this time because we need the Rakuyo. I was arrogant enough to believe I could handle fighting them both without cheesing them, but after a few times I got the message. The worst part about all this is the winter lanterns, honestly. Sometimes I would have them ready to cheese, only to get killed by the second winter lantern at the end of the tunnel. They weren't really in a good position to reliably hit with my bullets, so I did a hit and run method with the Chikage since we can still hit them through the floor from up here. Beware, they can hit you too, so I'd highly recommend staying topped off at all times, even if it doesn't seem like you need to heal. Alright, the hardest part's taken care of. Now, all that's left is to progress through Yahar'gul. That should be easy in comparison to what we just went through. Thank God you don't lose the claw mark rune if you die. We'll kill Gilbert as well, so we can get the second variant. I stopped by the upper cathedral ward just to pick up the Cosmic Eye Watcher badge. That way, we'll be able to purchase twin shards with blood echoes instead of insight. Now our Adela outfit is ready. Obviously, she doesn't wield a Rakuyo. So let me explain. Adela's questline can go a different way if you take Ariana's blood too many times. If this happens, she'll eventually stop offering blood and try to kill you with her dagger. This dagger isn't obtainable without cheating it in, and even if I wanted to go through the trouble of doing that, the moveset isn't even fully programmed. Even in the untransformed mode, it could be argued that the Rakuyo resembles a dagger enough to count. But why would we use this when we have the Blade of Mercy? Well, it's because of the transformed L2 attack. If we pretend that the sword in the right arm isn't there, we can use the hilt as a dagger. If we tap L2 and only ever perform the first hit of the combo, we can repeatedly stab with the dagger part of the weapon, much like how Adela swings her own dagger. The Blade of Mercy focuses a lot more on movement in a way that I don't think is suited for Adela, but that's just my opinion. Whenever you have to improvise for NPC equipment, it's always up to your own interpretation. Broader returns as we descend into the Nightmare of Mensis to chase down another victim. Fittingly, said victim is Micolash, who lures us into a gank under the guise of a 1v1 for the authentic invader experience. While his augur of Ebrietas is dangerous, it's very linear to make up for this and can be avoided with a simple sidewalk. Just in case, I kept the bloodletter untransformed so I could have access to my gun for parries. However, I think it's much better to stay close to him and stunlock him. There's not much he can do from close range. In the second phase, he also can't use a call beyond if we stay close to him. The worst he can do is punch us and set us up for the tentacles again, but if we're careful about our stamina usage, we can mostly avoid this. As the night comes to a close, the horrors culminate in the blood moon, and the hopes of all our cathedral dwellers have been shattered. So perhaps we're showing them mercy, even if we may also be a product of the nightmare. Except for the old lady. I still haven't claimed all of my free sedatives, so she's gonna have to tough it out. If we're going to be using our fists again, we should probably level up both strength and dex, since both stats have been upgraded enough to boost their damage. At least, that was the idea. I'm still hardly making a dent in the celestial emissary's health. I tried killing a few of the normal ones first, but they respawn too quickly, and every time I try to backstab the main one, they crowd around me and wobble me. Eventually, I just wasn't even trying anymore and accepted my fate. Even if I did manage to backstab it, with my luck I would never be able to pull off a chain to skip the second phase, so this fight would end up taking forever either way. Since that went so well, I took Ariana back to Old Yharnam to finally kill Darkbeast Paarl. I figured this one would be easy since we're fighting it so late, but my raw damage was only slightly better, and I died long before I could break any limbs or stagger it. Ariana's not feeling it today. I mean, can you blame her? She just gave birth to an alien monstrosity, for God's sake. Forget about the optional bosses. We're heading back to the DLC as Yamamura and killing Laurence. I'm not doing this for no reason. I want the Beast's Embrace rune as a finishing touch to one of the NPC cosplays. You'll see soon. I was right to save Yamamura for the tankier guys in the DLC. His garb has very high fire resistance to deal with Laurence. And in the untransformed mode, his Chikage does thrust damage, which is his lowest physical resistance. He's equally weak to blood damage. However, I wasn't quite brave enough to use the transformed mode in this fight and risk killing myself when I've gotten this far. It seems counterintuitive to pivot to Laurence right after dying to both the Celestial Emissary and Darkbeast Paarl, but what's even weirder is that it worked, and I beat him on the first try. Now that we have our special rune, we'll upgrade our beast claws a bit and give the Celestial Emissary another try, and forget all about the rune in the process. My original plan was to be both variants of the Suspicious Beggar, one human and one beast, so only using the rune for the second version. However, I had a nearly identical setup for Gilbert with the bandaged attire. I would exclusively use the Beast's Embrace in that case. What ended up happening was I confused the two and merged them into one, a mistake that I didn't even realize I had made until I reviewed the footage and saw that I seemingly used the Suspicious Beggar 3 times. But we can fix it. We'll just say that one of these is Gilbert on the verge of becoming a full beast and one is the beggar. I'll leave it to you to decide which is which. In any case, whoever it was, they did their job well and got these little guys out of the way, only to die to a literal infant. I'm just gonna take my spell and get the hell out of here. I'll be right back, but only after I have a properly upgraded weapon. Simon's bow blade is starting to fall behind, so we need to prepare it for a late game boss. At least we can buy chunks at the insight shop now. I've been hoarding tons of consumable insight that I can finally put to good use. When I picked up a Call Beyond, I was reminded that spells take arcane, and I need to stop slacking with my levels. Bosses who are weak to bullets to the head are Simon's specialty, so obviously I had to use him for Ebrietas. This is off topic, but I noticed that this version of the emulator seems to have fixed the 60 FPS particle effects bug, so we don't have to fight Ebrietas anymore. Anyways, it only takes a few charge shots to open her up for a visceral. The only attack I struggle with is the head charge. That caused 1 death, but on the second attempt, my luck was better. Every now and then I'll get killed by a Call Beyond, but usually that's because I'm not looking at it while dodging. It's time for the final push before the end of the night. As you can see, I was still confused about Gilbert and the beggar, but if you look at this one, it's clear that we're meant to be the abhorrent beast, aka the beast form of the suspicious beggar. The biggest giveaway is the use of the transformed beast claw and bolt paper, which mimics the electricity emanating from its body. While this will be very powerful when combined with the beast claw's innate beasthood effect, We can't forget that we hardly have on anything to boost our defense, so we'll be taking just as much damage in return. The Beast's Embrace rune gives us a really cool dodge that we can use to our advantage. For me, it's much easier to pilot than the Parasite dodge, and it really adds to the animalistic feeling of the weapon, doesn't it? Before we go any further, we're eating that last umbilical cord just to make sure there's no chance of missing the moon presence again. Seeing as this is literally the last boss in the DLC, let's finally max out our Chikage. The piercing rifle is another slow firearm, which means it's not the best choice if you want to focus on parrying. To be fair, the item description did warn me about this, and I chose not to listen. Regardless, it's absolutely possible to parry the Orphan of Cause and pull off a visceral attack, but I only did this in the first phase and chose to match his aggression in the second phase. To do this, we have to take advantage of the rapid healing effect we get from Adeline's blood. While it's going, we need to go crazy with the transformed Chikage since we're practically getting a chance to use it for free. Once the effect runs out, we'll switch back to the untransformed mode and bait the jump attacks. That's the one good thing about him leaping into the air so much. If you stay close to him, the recovery time is longer than you'd expect, so you have a good chance for a charged attack. I rushed through Mensis earlier and missed a lot of upgrade materials. Most importantly, the other blood rock we'll need to max out our final weapon. There's also plenty of chunks to collect before we resort to farming. All we have to do is buy the repeating pistol and we're all set to be Yosefka, or Imposter Yosefka. Well, anyways, I just thought it would be most fitting to close the run by being an imposter of an imposter. The ultimate imposter, if you will. In addition to our threaded cane, we have a few spells in our arsenal this time. Augur of Ebrietas, and A Call Beyond. I'm prioritizing the latter just for the novelty of it, but it is a bullet eater, so after a few casts I stopped using it against Gehrman so I could have bullets left for parrying. The repeating pistol takes 2 bullets per shot. However, if we successfully parry him and land a visceral, the Odin Writhe rune we got from Yosefka will refund us back those 2 bullets, effectively making it cost nothing. There's no way I'm fighting Moon Presence in this state. Thank God Gehrman is gone forever, and you don't have to repeat the whole thing like a certain other final boss I know of. I haven't fought this in a while, so it'll take a couple tries to get used to her moveset again. Why do I feel like I've used that excuse in several videos already? At first, I was going for a pure melee fight because I assumed she would be stronger against Arcane. After all, I don't know the boss's resistances off the top of my head. As it turns out, she's not particularly strong against any element, so A Call Beyond is actually really good in this fight. This applies in other games like Elden Ring especially, where any spell that hits multiple times is considered a giant killer, because it's so easy for each hit to connect against large enemies. Unlike Elden Ring, we can't use it forever. Our bullets limit us to maybe 5 casts max. Eventually, we're going to have to rely on our threaded cane when we no longer have bullets left to spam A Call Beyond. At this point, I had walked right into her numbing mist and had my HP reduced to 1 from her AoE. I was panicking a bit, but I got extremely lucky that she decided to summon the numbing orbs again. She is completely vulnerable while doing this, so I had to take my chance and kill her quickly. In the end, we couldn't sustain our stolen human form and revert to our true, sluggy body. A powerless parasite once more, for we have no more hosts to steal life from. The only one remaining is the doll, who is something between living and dead, and thus was the only one who could resist our power and return to her former self. It seems that we're stuck in her care. We foolishly showed her our true form when we thought we could kill her like all the others, and now she has confined us in the dream for all eternity. I do hope you enjoyed the video. These videos are always fun to make, so I want them to be fun to watch as well. If you like my videos, feel free to look at my channel for more videos about Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring. Thanks for watching!